Welcome to Unit 1, Research and Practice of Teaching Writing and English Language Arts in General, Inclusive, and ELL Settings. Whether you're taking 3210, 15, or 17, this is the class for you. To start off, let's look at our agenda, and I'm going to introduce you to the class as well as myself, review the expectations through the syllabus and other topics of study. We're going to also go ahead into the content of Unit 1, which is the history of writing instruction, as well as situating language arts literacy and learning within the content disciplines. And we're going to finish with an activity. So a little bit about me. My name is Evan Ortlieb. I am a professor of literacy education. I like to surf if and when I have the opportunity to do so. That's a picture of me surfing in Australia. And to your bottom left, you can see a picture of me working with the students with whom I care so much about. Here's a young fellow, and he's reading The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is oftentimes a popular book with the youth. And you can also see me here with some master students teaching this exact class at our Queens campus. And so I wanted to share these things with you because I'm all about education, and I'm also all about having an enjoyment, enjoying ourselves in a relaxing environment after we finish our hard work for the day. The course expectations and my goals really for this class are to situate your knowledge when it comes to language arts, that is speaking, listening, reading, and writing, as well as paying particular attention to the writing process and the writing products that are expected in schools. And so I would also encourage you to come up with your own goals for this class. Send those to me. Let me know what they are so I can help you achieve those this semester. We also have a variety of readings, although there's no required textbook. Those readings will be provided to you typically in a PDF format or a web link. We're also going to have videos and other supplemental resources alongside some PowerPoints with some voiceovers, much like the one I'm doing right now. And then also it's a really good idea to have a look at the syllabus for the required tasks and policies and grading and so on, as well as the course calendar that's available in Blackboard. So if we reflect upon our own experiences with writing, whether it be elementary school, high school, or even at the college level, if I think back upon my own experiences, I can distinctly recall writing being used as a consequence, unfortunately. And it was related to my misbehavior in elementary and middle school. So whether it was writing lines 5 times each or writing 500-word essays and the like, those were commonplace. I associated bad behavior with writing, and I was never really interested in writing for pleasure or writing much at all now that I think about it. In high school, writing became more synonymous with essays. So whether it was Beowulf or Shakespeare, we wrote all about these different topics in English class. And we also wrote in mathematics class too, because everybody remembers those geometry proofs that I dreaded. And we even wrote essays in history and civics too. But it wasn't until college that writing for explicit purposes became clear to me. So whether it was public speeches or argumentative essays and even research papers, those became cornerstones of writing in college. So I ask you, can you relate to these experiences? What stands out to you from your own memories? If we think about a brief history of the writing process in terms of its instruction, it really goes back to a best-selling book that came out, and it was called Why Johnny Can't Read and What You Can Do About It. And this bestseller really challenged the established methods of teaching reading. The author wrote, "The teaching of reading all over the U.S., in all the schools and in all the textbooks, is totally wrong and flies in the face of all logic and common sense." He then went on to explain that professors of education changed the way that reading was taught in American schools in the 1930s. And they threw out traditional alphabetic phonics methods, those in which one learns how to sound out words and replace it with new sight word, whole word, and look and say methods to teach children how to read. As if it were Chinese, he said. He said that if you impose an ideographic teaching method on phonetic reading and writing system, you actually end up with more reading disabilities. What do you think led to this? What was going on in history at that time? I know in the late 50s and early 60s, it was all about the space race. And things became more and more pronounced when it came to mastery learning and skills. And there has to be a process in which we get to those ends, and we have to get to space before the Russians. And these were things that were commonplace sort of in the public sphere. And then as it got into the 70s, again, we continued with this diagnostic and remedial approach, sort of that medical model for reading. And it wasn't until the late 70s and even 80s where we shifted back from products to the process of writing. And finally, more currently, actually some researchers out of Columbia and some others came up with this idea of a writer's workshop where students take ownership of their work and they navigate through different steps of the writing process, whether that be drafting or revising and editing, brainstorming, publishing, researching, all these sorts of things. And they were going to look at those one at a time. And that was called the Writer's Workshop. And that was sort of popular up until the 2000s with the No Child Left Behind and the introduction of high stakes testing, where if a student did not pass a particular test in a grade level, then he or she could not pass that, go on to the next level rather. And so the emphasis was on passing these tests rather than good writing itself. And so for the first decade of the 2000s, writing instruction really was geared towards that, even though on the surface it was a balanced approach between the process of writing and skill instruction. So what are the situations in which we need to write within the classroom? So we write for a variety of purposes, as we've already mentioned. And when you think about your own students in your classroom, what kind of demands do you put in place? One example is the 1-minute paper. Many of you probably tried this. It's traditionally used at the end of a class session where students are asked to take 1 minute and write on a separate sheet of paper, maybe the main point that they're taking away from that day's lecture, or one question that they have or issue that they don't quite understand. These are normally turned in without names, so students are more open to express their ideas. Another instance of writing in the classroom could be writing to prompt or focus a discussion. Before opening up the floor or discussion at any given point where the class might seem stuck or confused, have students take 2 minutes to take notes on what they're thinking about. You will double the number of hands raised to offer a question or comment oftentimes through this strategy. The invitation can be as open as the questions for the 1-minute writing, or they can focus on a specific issue you're trying to explore. So there's many more, of course, but these are 2 examples of writing situations in a class. So if we think about what jobs today require writing proficiency, I tried to Google, and I came up with dentists and medical doctors, as well as marine biologists. So lots of scientists have to write for not only disseminating information, but also the scientific method as they progress through that. Further, other people such as managers, technicians, histologists, paramedics, entomologists, lab workers, grant writers, teachers, professors, mailmen, etc. They have to be incredibly literate, be able to read and write to a greater efficiency. And so when we think about writing efficiency for writing proficiency, it really takes both time, effort, and careful teacher pedagogy. So when a student says, writing's not for me, show them this picture and say, well, writing's pretty much necessary for every career profession, whether you want to play sports or you want to do something in any other field for that matter. So it's really an introduction of these ideas and showing that writing is meaningful and purposeful, where we can really make the most progress with our students.